So just saw this video where Brother Colin Noir's on a news channel talking about how somebody in Biden's crew that he appointed is very vehemently passionate about this idea of a mandatory buyback program. And I'm with this guy, and it's always fascinating how, yeah, people removed from the reality of actually interfacing with firearms have these ideas that they seem pretty wild. But yeah, the idea of a buyback is not a new thing. You've heard of this a while back.
Well, they've been doing these so-called government gun buyback programs for over 50 years. And first of all, let's use a little bit of logic, and then we'll go into the absurdity of it. In order for you to buy something back, you would have to have owned it before. The government never owned these guns. Those belong to us. So they're not buying anything back, and you can't mandate that. And last time that was tried, I think it was a variation of that, the British came to Concord Bridge to do that, and that didn't turn out so well for the gun procurers of the government. That being said, I've studied this insanity for a long time, and one of the most egregious results of these so-called feel-good, well, if we buy back the guns, then nobody will shoot anybody. Yeah, and if we just put walls around the swimming pool, nobody will drown. So in most instances, the government or the agencies of the city or the municipality that bought back the guns, they didn't buy them back, they bought the guns. It was proven that many of those guns were stolen by people who went, hey man, they'll buy these guns if we get some guns. So they went out and stole them and sold them to the government. So basically a gun buyback program encourages and results in increased criminal activity. And by the way, in every instance where guns are outlawed or extremely restricted, in every instant, look at the blue and red map of America. All those Democrat-run blue smudges, those are basically gun-free zones. And you know what has happened in every gun-free zone?
Higher crime, higher gun
Columbine
crimes.
was a gun-free zone. The church where the shootings took place was a gun-free zone. Sandy Hook was a gun-free zone. Do I really need to go on? So the concept of the Democrats, for the most part, willingly and intentionally releasing armies of dangerous criminals into the streets because of COVID, because of the Chinese virus attack, while they're releasing armies of dangerous criminals, then they want to defund the police, and then they want to restrict capability of self-defense. Let me tell you what that is. The tyrants are increasing the wolves while they're declawing the sheep and stopping the sheepdogs. When there's more wolves, released felons, and the sheep are increasingly helpless, and the law enforcement is defunded, sheepdogs are removed, more sheep die. If you'd like to debate that with me, I'll take on anyone who would like to debate that. Anytime, anywhere. Unarmed and helpless, especially when forced, is unarmed and helpless, which makes you the ultimate victim for bad people. Who will never be unarmed and helpless.
Which is an easier people to monitor, control, and shift into the cattle herd. But one thing interesting.
Nuremberg, 1938.
Not a good thing happened. This whole defund the police thing,
Wow.
in certain communities, the police has been, like, for instance, a young boy of African descent who grew up in Compton, California, hasn't ever known the police to be on his side to protect. He's basically grown up in a war zone with,
Sure.
yes, in gang, it's a bad, unhealthy environment, but it's kind of institutionally indoctrinated into this, like, world that,
Propaganda.
Well, I mean, slavery brought a lot of human beings to America.
We fixed slavery.
In
Completely.
in some ways,
No,
you know,
in all ways.
Well, in mental ways, a lot of ways, no. In a
Well,
lot of
if
ways,
you
mentally-
go, geez, I'd like to remember the slavery part. Let's remember that instead of the help wanted sign, where I can do anything that I want to do and pursue any career, anywhere, anytime. Zero slavery unless you enslave yourself with the forced memory of horrible times.
Right, but specifically focusing on the defund the police thing, there's an idea of like, okay, in a situation where a cop has abused his power, where there have been shitty cops. I have not known, other than you're showing me good people,
I don't
good
know.
cops.
I don't know the instances, but I'm sure there have been.
Right. So in those scenarios,
George Floyd killed himself, by the way. But go ahead. Rodney King asked for it. Go ahead.
all kinds of
And
things
Michael Brown was trying to disarm a cop and kill him, so they had to stop him.
And there's a lot of these moments where media has totally skewed what happened and created
Every time.
and inflated the narrative that it was something other than what it was.
Enslaved a false narrative.
Right, but the idea of a genuine people-led, what's it called, where the people, not military, but a civilian-led military.
Militia?
A militia, yeah. You know, the idea of the institution of the police getting less funding and people from the actual, you know, the communities that have weapons like these kind of rising up and starting to become more, I don't know, accountable for their own protection, and instead relying on this heavily funded institution called police, which sometimes allows cops that aren't doing the best of their actual, what their job's supposed to be.
That is so rare, though. And if you defund the police, it's where they've done. Minneapolis defunded the police. Now they're scrambling to get police from other agencies to come save them from the exploding crime rate. As soon as the message goes out, we're reducing law enforcement. We're going to defund the police. There will be less cops available. We're going to get rid of the law enforcement. Who rises up? The worst of society. And the statistics prove that the ultimate victims of defunding the police are the inner city blacks that were being protected by the police. Blacks will kill more blacks tonight than cops have in the last 20 years. Cops protect people of all colors. In the rare instance where there's a racist example, it's so rare I can't even point to one. George Floyd killed himself with fentanyl. He was gagging and couldn't breathe in the back seat all by himself. And then he started fighting the cops violently. I saw the footage. You didn't, because the media wouldn't show it to you. They had to restrain him. George Floyd killed himself with fentanyl. He was a liability to his family. He was a liability to his neighborhood. He was a liability to society. He was a liability to mankind. He was a self-inflicted thug of the worst kind. And finally, the cops caught him that day. He fought violently. They put him in the back seat in handcuffs. He's gagging. Fentanyl. And they had to restrain him. He's going berserk in the back seat. So he broke up loose, and they had to control him. Knee in the neck had nothing to do. I saw the autopsy. I saw the forensic examination. George Floyd killed himself, just like everybody does with fentanyl. And meanwhile, they give him a hero's funeral. And then they name boulevards after a man who ruined his family, ruined his neighborhood.
But what about just the image of the cop with the knee on the neck for so long?
Ugly image. How about the image of the guy getting your chicken soup and cutting the chicken's head off? Pretty ugly image. Good soup.
But you're
ugly image.
You're saying
good outcome. They restrained him and protected that neighborhood from George Floyd.
But you're saying that there's footage that the mass population hasn't seen that basically depicts George Floyd before the knee on the neck thing,
violently struggling with the police, just like the guy in Kenosha. He was fighting, he resisted the taser, and we're trained, I'm trained with the same footage. Whenever a perpetrator fights back violently and can't be subdued because he's so high and powered by this outside force,
chemical
yes,
within,
and he gets to his vehicle, innocent people die. They had to shoot him. It was a clean shoot. Trayvon Martin, clean shoot. George Floyd, clean shoot. Michael Brown, clean. Every one of these instances, the police used necessary force to protect the neighborhood. These people were ruining everybody's lives.
And there's the other instance where I forgot the lady's name, but she was supposedly asleep in her apartment. And
and she was dating drug runners, and the cops, by the way, it wasn't a no-knock search. They actually have footage. It was knocking.
Yeah.
They have eyewitnesses. The guy knocked, and when the cops came in the door, they were met with gunfire. I know what I'd do. I'd shoot back.
But I heard Candace Owens talk about this, and it's just
She's awesome.
The narrative that we get primarily through social media and stuff is never seen.
Yeah, take it from Candace Owens. She's much smarter than I am, and she's much more tuned in, and she has the facts. And the point is that in a scramble to feel good, we live a lie. Well, I'm not going to eat that chicken because I don't want to kill it. The chicken's going to die. Nobody said he's not going to eat a chicken so we can save that one. It's all about feeling good. It's not about doing good. Dead chicken's good. Food for humanity, good. Could there be a better system? There are some improved systems. I recommend pheasant. But feel good and imagery, you can't respond to that. What about the image of Hitler with the children on his lap being sweet and gentle? That was a pretty good image. It was false.
And this is technically the idea that the Democratic Liberal campaign uses against weapons like these to like vilify them into looking like they're only used for bad things.
So the Democrats want to release violent felons and then all of a sudden come after people in our guns who never did anything wrong. I use the analogy, there's a nice dam. And over on the left side of the dam, there's no leaks. On the right side of the dam, there's a bunch of water coming through a gap. The Democrats don't care about the village downriver. They're ignoring the water coming through that part of the dam, and they're going to get all kinds of funding to reinforce this side of the dam. This side of the dam's fine. All us gun owners are fine. You keep letting out all these leaks that are flooding the neighborhood. Water as an example of criminality. It's truly unbelievable. If you listen to their words and watch their policies and their actions, it's literally the devil at work. We are going to hurt people and ruin their lives, and while we're telling them that we're saving them and making their lives better. The war on poverty. Trillions and trillions of dollars spent. Reduce poverty? Zero. Because it was about feeling good instead of going, you're poor, but you smoke.
Like instead of increased accountability, it's increased dependency.
Yes.
Which looks good initially.
No, it never looks good.
Well, it sounds good.
It sounds good. So I'm going to help this poor guy. Like the guy on Michigan Avenue. Let's give this man some money. He looks hungry. Remember that? And then we followed him, and he took off his raggedy clothes, and he got in a brand new Jeep and drove away.
But also is attempted to look good in the marketing campaigns. I recently
propaganda.
Saw flipping through channels and saw one of those like terrifyingly awful, horrid, wounded animal commercials and like asking you for like just $5.
We're gonna save the raccoon on the highway.
And within five seconds of seeing it, you're emotionally triggered, and your fight or flight system has a response to this image.
Especially if you live in the city and you have no idea how these animals live anyway.
So it's like they're playing on people's disconnectedness from these particular realities.
Emotion instead of knowledge.
And manipulating from afar.
It's very manipulative and it's very deceiving, and I believe it enters the realm of demonicy because these people are enriching themselves while hurting and destroying other lives. They show a picture of a polar bear and a cub floating on an ice floe with sad piano music, and the lady comes on and says, "We've been melting the ice and the polar bears are floating away and there's too much water." Polar bears live on the ice. They can swim for 25 miles. It's what polar bears do. But if people have no clue about the polar Arctic and the wildlife and the habitat and conditions, they go, polar bear's gonna drown. Polar bears don't drown. Can't drown them. They like ice flows. They're taking a trip to the next seal area so they can kill a seal and eat it while it's still screaming and crying. So the world is tooth, fang, and claw. We as a conscientious being, we can bring comfort and love and solace and remedy to our fellow man. The doe will do that to her fawn at first, and then this winter, that doe, on many occasions, will club her fawn to death over the last remnants of a cultivated soybean field. But they think all they can think about is Bambi. It's really a tragedy that we have migrated from rugged individual, hands-on, self-sufficiency, rural lifestyle to a concrete jungle. And not everybody's guilty. There's a lot of people in Manhattan and Detroit and San Francisco that understand nature, that are smart entrepreneurs. In fact, one of the biggest growing businesses in San Francisco amongst the world of vegans and vegetarians and animal rights people is the field-to-table food procedure where they go out and kill pigs and deer and geese and ducks and clams.
Farm to table.
Yes, and they're more than happy to slice them up and put a little duck fat in your beans. So that's the reality. There will be some people that are horrified that you would dare kill a duck to cook your beans in. You better get over it. Guess what we're doing? It's going on right now. It's going to go on tomorrow. It's going to go on forever. It's called food, and it's discomforting if you've never taken part in it. That dying duck is a beautiful ballet of God's miraculous nature.
Like the water buffalo with the lions last
Yes,
night.
that's beautiful. To the uninitiated or someone who has no clue about nature, oh, that's mean. They're being mean. Nothing mean about it. It's pretty violent, pretty ferocious.
A woman giving birth isn't necessarily a pleasant sight.
Not
but it's
pleasant,
like
but the outcome is
the highest beauty possible.
Number one, the ballet of re-life. New life.
The balance of these hyper-opposed opposites.
Yep. So, self-defense is perfect. Unarmed and helpless is literally a red carpet welcome for evil to do evil upon you. That's a shame. That's against the most basic instinct of survival and value of one's life to not be prepared to defend that gift. And that's why we own guns. It's one of the many reasons we own guns, but I think it's the primary reason. Don't tread on me. Come and take it. Oh, you are really vicious.
I help now or come back and help in a second?
Oh, yeah, I can come back.
Okay.
This will end up in my man cave.
Got it. I'll bring it downstairs in that area.
Yeah, in my man cave.
Yeah.
And this stuff too.
Gotcha.
In fact, I'll probably drive down there and do all this down.
I'll be back in a second. Lots to process. Some lenses are definitely more subjective on particular information nodes. This one can't really have like intense alternative mirrors for that one. On certain situations, like this George Floyd footage that he saw, I've never seen that footage. But I can imagine most of the people watching this video also haven't. But it's so fascinating from my lens to hear such like vivid opposition to what it feels like most would consider the primarily accepted narrative. And there's something in my instinct that senses, well, when there's a large crowd walking one way, you better bet that that's not the way. This has pretty much been my primary learning in metaphysics and the journey of self-realization through my initiation into Raja Yoga and Kriya Yoga. So the lens that just spoke obviously predominantly identified as Republican, that for the Republic, and conservative, that which aligns with conservation of energy. But amongst these dualities, it doesn't mean that it's not also for the liberation of certain facilities in society either, which is why my whole thing is just like, I don't see the benefit in the duality identification anymore. I don't see the benefit in rigidly identifying amongst the red or the blue. Where's all the purple? Where is the gray area in between black and white? And as a starseed indigo, it's like I literally get the text message from Father saying, come help unpack guns. Then I'm listening to rhetoric and seeing how there is, man, it's violent juxtaposition in society. And somebody's got to be, someone will quickly be obviously triggered by this video, but quick to say who is right and who is wrong. I suppose my interest is more in what is valid, more so than other. Like what is more valid than other? But every perspective has some validity. But this perspective that he's talking about with like the removal from the reality of the guns. Mind you, this video started about being the gun buyback program. Because he started riffing and I just asked about it quickly because I saw this brother Colin Noir's video and I was just like, all right, let me inquire here. And yeah, the symphony went in the directions that it went, which you witnessed here. All I can sense is there's something in the Biden frequency that's not for the genuine well-being of humanity. There is some kind of ploy to trick. There's some kind of ploy, there's some kind of attempt to come across as for the best interest, but upon further investigation, like there's something else going on. There's something beneath the surface that what is served on the platter, what is communicated at the quick glance is meant to disorient the receiver of the information from the true nature of the dish. So it's literally like this angle I'm holding the camera at shows you the top of my palm and hides the bottom of my palm. And my interest in these conversational alchemy adventures with my father is to like go like this and reorient the perspective, even for myself, to just see what is beneath what is being presented. And it's the same thing. It's the same hand. So there, in this video and in this, my intention in making this and presenting it like this is also to encourage you to look at that, wherever that is for you and whatever that is for you. But in particular, in the focus of this presentation here in this rectangle, what's this whole, what is the attractiveness for so many in not just Biden? He's not the only one that's recommending it. Obviously, there's my initial point out was like somebody in his camp is the one that's presenting this and kind of pushing it forward. But what's the attractiveness in this idea of taking away guns? I had a dear brother and a mentor say like all guns should be taken away, and I was just like, man, that just doesn't feel like a realistic idea. I was just, you know, like hypothetically, because it's a very hypothetical idea. It's like hypothetically, let's take away all guns. I don't own a gun. I've shot a couple guns in the past several years, but I grew up shooting guns every day, ish, but a lot of them. I've been a lifetime member of the NRA since I was like 2 months old or something like that. It's just not my calling anymore. My initiation into the metaphysical alchemy lineage that I'm now amongst has called me into other focuses. But so I come here and I'm like, okay, this is an octave of consciousness. How is the one moving into these different twos? Or how is the one infinite I am moving into these different ego complexes? And how are they all reflecting in this kind of coliseum of ideas and opinions? But yeah, it's the idea of like, okay, hypothetically, let's say we're medieval times and somebody's like, let's ban all the swords. And it's like, I don't see the validity. It's not valid, it's not relevant, it's not a good idea to recommend something that has such a incredible requirement from so many other ingredients. Like, you can't ban swords because you'd have to ban blacksmiths from making these shapes with metal, and as soon as you do, it's going to be like telling the kid, hey, you can go and have fun, but just don't do that thing. And you know, as soon as you tell that kid that, that's the highest thing that they want to do now. That's the most interesting thing they want to do. So the one infinite source presence is now causing this hyper duality as more and more of us are unifying and finding similarities. What is different in duality is becoming more vividly apparent as what is unified and similar is also becoming more vividly apparent. Interesting stuff. Would love to hear your thoughts. Comment, vibe. If I was like an official YouTuber, I'd be like, make sure you hit the subscribe button. I don't know, whatever. Blessings. Namaste.